Hello, everybody, and welcome to our first DDoc event for 2023. I am Renza Scibilia. I am the head of advocacy at DDoc. And hey, I'm going to say Happy New Year to everyone. I think I can still say that because I've jumped in before the 1st of February. Happy New Year. I hope you've all had a wonderful start to the year. We certainly have, and we are ready to kick off DDoc activities with our first Doc Talk for the year. And it's all about insulin. I'm so excited about this. I know I am excited talking about insulin, but really mostly that's because we've got an incredible panel of speakers. So hi to everybody who is watching at home on Facebook or via YouTube or from the DDoc website. I am not awake in the middle of the night for once doing this. I'm actually coming to you today from New York, but we do have some speakers who are bringing in the very early morning, so we will hear from them soon, and we can make sure that our hearts go out to them. So as I said, we're talking all about insulin today. So just a couple of housekeeping things before we start. Firstly, these events work so brilliantly when they are interactive. Please, please, please do ask us questions and we will get to them, or leave us comments and we will make sure we get to as many as possible. We know that people do like to engage with our speakers, and so this is a great opportunity to do that. We'd like to say thanks to Lily, who is sponsoring this event. So it's a DDoc event sponsored by Lily. The DDoc team has put together an incredible program. Our DDoc voices and the diabetes community is just such an incredible wealth of information, and we have got some truly remarkable people who are going to be sharing their experiences and their knowledge. And I can see that we are already getting some comments in with people wishing each other a happy new year, which is lovely. Okay, so I think, you know what, I'm going to get you all to do a little bit of work right now. We're going to do a couple of icebreakers. This is as much for me as for everyone watching at home. I've had a bit of time off, so I need to get back into it. So we're going to do some icebreaker questions. Now, if you have been part of our DDoc events previously, you will know that we use Meethi. So if you go to meethi.com, you will be able to join this. And there is a code, and it's right there on the screen. It's 14747927. Now, please use that. And we're going to start off by saying, where are you all coming in from? We know that we have people coming from everywhere around the world. Please share your location. You don't need to be shy. This is just for us to start off and to see where everybody is. As I said, I'm coming to you from New York. I've been here now for over 2 months. It's been a bit of a lovely family holiday. Can I just say though, and this is clearly coming from the Australian who doesn't understand cold weather, I'd really like it to snow a little bit. Hi from whoever it is who's dialing in from Switzerland. I can see that there are other people who are watching because I can see who they are and I can see where they're from. We've got some people from Berlin. I know we've got a couple of Aussies who are online. So thank you for joining us at this very early time of the day. USA, hello, San Francisco, South Africa. As ever with our DDoc events, they truly are representative of people from around the globe. So look at that as the places are coming in. Hello, whoever is watching from Uruguay. That is so incredible that we have got people from all around the world. Keep adding those. Incredible. From the Philippines, I know who that is because I can see that she's already sharing and commenting. Hello from Ottawa. Amazing. All right. Okay, let's move on to our next question. Now, I did tell you that we're talking about insulin, but our next lot of questions are not about insulin. These are about devices. Now, these questions might seem a little bit familiar. If you joined our last Doc Talk, which was all about connected devices, these are the questions that we asked. And we're just curious to see the people who are watching, if it's the same responses, or perhaps it could be, a whole different cohort, or people have changed what it is that you're using. So have a look and share with us what connected devices you're currently using. And just a reminder, this is just information that is just for us. We like to know who we're speaking to because it certainly helps with what we do at DDoc to make sure that we're targeting things in the right way. So we've got lots of people commenting then there about their different options. We have lots of DIY people watching, which is quite common, and I know that that is often what people are using. You can add me to that one as well. I can't do a million things at once. I should be adding my own comments. All right, let's move on to the next question then, if we can. And this one is a little bit of a wish list, I guess. So if access and cost wasn't an issue, and it always is something that is front of mind here in the DDoc team and across the diabetes community, tell us what is it that you would like to be using. Could be the same thing, actually. but it might be something really different. And that access might be because something's not available where you are. It could be an access issue because of cost. It could be an access issue because there's no healthcare professionals who can help you with that. And I will just say, I am loving all of the comments who are coming in. Somebody said that they're missing this. Hey, we're here. Keep coming back to us. We've always got lots of things happening in Team DDoc. Okay, and look, lots of people wishing that GOI was something that they could find a way to access. Gosh, I'm loving all of these comments that are coming in. Thank you so much. And let's go to our final question before we kick off our speakers. And this one is a really interesting one, I think. So this is an open-ended question. So share, how do you currently use your diabetes data? Is it just something that you use for yourself to keep records? Is it something that you share with people? Is it something that you use because you are one of those real data tech-focused people? Now, we're going to hear from someone a little later, one of our speakers, and I think he has got a graph of every single one of his HbA1c readings since pretty much the beginning of time, because he's had diabetes for a very, very long time. Is that you? Are you one of those people? Or are you a little bit more like me, which is data is great and I use it in the moment, and that's how I find it really useful. So tell us how you use yours. Check in quickly and try to avoid frustration. Oh my goodness. Frustration and diabetes data, they seem to go hand in hand sometimes, don't they? To help me make treatment decisions. I love that. Night Scout, yep, to analyze and improve DOI settings and center HCPs. Sharing is really interesting. It is something that some people do and others prefer not to. And I like this comment. I often don't use my diabetes data. And hey, you know what? I am that person too. Sometimes it's just too overwhelming. These comments are so interesting. Have a look as they're coming in to analyze user behavior, make amendments to my basal between appointments. Excellent. Data is incredibly useful, isn't it? If we know what we're doing with it and we're using it in a way that works for us. We're going to talk about how there's no one size fits all in insulin in a minute, but that's certainly the same when it comes to diabetes data, diabetes devices, pretty much anything to do with diabetes, whatever type of diabetes you are living with. So these comments are still coming in, but we are going to move on because we have got such an incredibly busy program with such remarkable speakers. So thank you so much for that. I hope you're all feeling more comfortable and settled in. I know I certainly am. So what I would like to do now is to introduce our first speaker. Now, before I do that, I just want to say that we are talking about access. We are talking about insulin today. And when we're talking about anything in the diabetes world here at DDoc, access is always front and center. We never, ever take for granted or believe that everybody has easy access to anything. We very much know that that's not the case. And so today, while we're talking about insulin and all diabetes care, we really feel that we need to address that even though we have been celebrating a centenary of insulin, we've been doing that now for 12 months. This week was Leonard Thompson Day. While we are recognizing and celebrating that we have had insulin, it's been available for 100 years. And you know what? We should be celebrating this. This is a medical research triumph that we absolutely should be celebrating and should continue to do. But we do need to recognize that for people around the globe, that certainly isn't something that can be taken for granted. I'd like to welcome Sana Ajmal from Pakistan. She is from the incredible organisation Meethi Zindagi. Now, when I talk about remarkable diabetes advocates, in my mind, one of the people who is always there is Sana. I'm lucky enough to call her a friend. I look up to her because she's truly, truly remarkable, but she's now going to speak about what access means to her and what Meethi Zindagi is doing about it as well. Sana, thank you so much for joining us. I know it's a difficult time of day, so thank you for being here. I'm going to jump off now. And
thank you so much, Renza. And yeah, I feel the same way about you, and I don't want to get started on that. We're going to take an hour. So thank you so much for bringing me here, and we can start. Okay, I'm really, really glad that DDoc brought this topic up. So let me start with this, that I am simply in love with DDoc, and I'm so glad that the team brought this topic up, because while we're showcasing today, and we'll realize once we go through the presentations even in more depth, that how different can diabetes be for different people, many a times, so many of us around the world, and I would say that this is not a small number, it's millions of people around the world who do not have options. So something, and this is such a fun session, but I'm going to start with this, that while we celebrate celebrate the detail with which medical science and research is going deeper and deeper into personalization of treatments. Something which is very upsetting for me is the pace with which the low resource settings are responding to it. It's extremely slow. And one reason, in my opinion, for this is the narrative. What I keep hearing in my last 10 years of advocacy, something that I've kept hearing like a buzz, is that despite the fact that research has gone so far ahead and people around the world are working on micromanagement of their insulin dosing, the devices, the data and everything, some of the research and the low resource guidelines still say that it's okay to use twice daily regimens. It's okay to use premixed insulin. And with all due respect to the challenges related to economic situations faced by various governments, the supply chain issues, et cetera, at least we should be stating unequivocally, for me, what I feel is that we should at least be stating that very clearly, that the bar needs to be set higher and that we need to do better for the diabetes community. And that while we can't provide better care right now, we need to find ways to be able to provide it in future. My whole issue is that I feel that the narrative keeps the bar low. And I'm so glad that DDoc has brought this topic up, because that's what will help build the narrative within the diabetes community, within the health professionals, within the researchers. I've gone to policymakers and heard, oh, but the guideline says it's okay to use twice daily regimens. And one part of the guideline says we can use data for this, we can do this, we can do that, we should do all the sensors, we should be using these kinds of insulins, this is what can be done. And then there's another part of the guideline that says it's okay to use twice daily regimens. It's okay to use premixed insulin, for example, even in children. The families, the guidelines say, and this is what the narrative has built up within the health professionals community, is that the families need to discipline the child's eating habits. Now, how do you convince a policymaker when that's what the guidelines says? How easy it is, and I'm going to ask you all, how easy is it for us or anyone to tailor the eating habits specifically at a very young age? It would have been easier for me to hear and digest the truth, which said, Osana, you're right, we can't provide that right now, but we'll work on it and see what can be done. What we ignore is how terrible can a treatment regimen that may not suit a person be for his or her quality of life, even if the HbA1c is perfect. The amount of time we need to just think about and manage life with a regimen that doesn't suit our lifestyle equates to full-time work. This narrative only widens the gap between those who have and those who do not have. If someone asks me, I would rather prefer not living at all like this. So I recently worked with an amazing group of professionals on ISPAD, low resource setting guidelines in 2022, and we could address some of this narrative to some extent, but I think a lot of work still needs to be done. What I'm glad about is that with this, when we co-created Meethi Zindagi with the diabetes community, we ensured that the children and young people who cannot afford, they get the kind of insulin that they need free of cost, delivered to their homes so that they can focus on their life and health instead of trying to survive the hum of everyday life, the unacceptable travel times, the cost of access to care, and the never-ending waiting lines. And they do not have to put up with any insulin that they are offered, but the doctors can actually work on personalizing treatment for them. And the most beautiful part of the service is that we have successfully subtracted the geography out of the equation. We cover the whole of Pakistan. And this certainly wasn't possible without our friends and donors, out of whom I would really like to mention Life for a Child for helping us carry out this much needed work. So this would be all from me. I would really urge you all to look into what Life for a Child is doing to help people around the world with access to insulin and help them as much as possible so they can continue helping organizations like us in low resource countries so that we can continue providing the care to people in our settings. Thank you so much.
Oh, Sana. Honestly, I think that you've brought a cheer squad with you. There are so many people. We have one of the comments up there. You've taken a great initiative, Sana. We're really proud of you. Everybody is proud of you, Sana. There are so many really great comments. Thank you so much. There was a comment that somebody made, and this one here that I wanted to mention. Thank you for addressing quality of life in the realm of access. You know, we talk about access and the frustrations of not being able to get our hands on what we need, what we want, what we need. But it's more than just the physical being able to get things and use things. It's the quality of life aspect of what is required when it isn't a simple process for us to simply go and get what it is that we need. So thank you. Thank you so much for making sure that that has been addressed. Sana, as ever, it's always so wonderful to hear from you and to hear your perspective. I would really encourage everybody to make sure that you are following Sana across all of her social channels, including the Meethi Zindagi website and socials as well, and keep up with what they're doing. And also, of course, Life for a Child too. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Renza, for having me.
Anytime. Oh my gosh, anytime. All right. Okay, so as I said, we really felt that access was something that we needed to address, and we wanted to do it up front in a way that the broader perspective that is really important, that we make sure that we don't forget when we are talking about anything to do with diabetes, insulin, devices, technologies, healthcare, every single aspect of diabetes care. Now, I am delighted that I now get to introduce Katarina Braune, Dr. Katarina Braune, who is from Charité in Berlin. She's also the head of medical at DDoc. She's also an absolutely incredible advocate. She is so smart. She's so smart. And she's actually going to help us try to navigate the maze of insulin. Now, I've had diabetes for about 25 years, and I swear it seemed a lot easier back when I was diagnosed. There really didn't seem to be quite the choices and the different things that you needed to consider. These days, we do have choice. That at least that is what is available out there. Whether or not it's available in your area is something different, perhaps. But let's bring Katarina on so that we can have a discussion. Hello, how are you?
Hi, Renza, and good morning from San Francisco. I'm so excited to be here.
So grateful that you have joined us, and welcome all the way over there in San Francisco. Actually, this is probably far closer than we usually are. So I'm thrilled that at least we're in the same country for a change. I'm delighted that you're going to be wearing your health professional hat at the moment, and thank you. It looks fine. And you're going to share with us, you're going to help us navigate that maze of all the different types of insulin. So why don't you take that away, and then we'll see how we go with some questions. But we've got a great panel discussion at the end. Before I jump off though, I just would like to remind everybody, if you have questions, please pop them in the comments. We will be able to make sure that we get to them. But it's a really great way for this to be as interactive as possible. So I'm going to jump off again, and we're going to leave it with you now, Katarina. Thank you.
Thank you, Renza, and let's get started. So, as you know, I'm a medical doctor. I'm a board-certified pediatrician and diabetes specialist, but I also live with type 1 myself, and I'm navigating the insulin maze every day. And the next few minutes are going to cover, no matter what type of insulin is available to you, how to get the most out of it. So let's get started. In general, there are two main groups of types of insulin, one which is considered the bolus insulin, which you use to cover your meals or to correct higher blood sugars. And then there's basal insulin, which covers intermediate acting or long acting ones, which are supposed to keep your glucose levels stable at times where you're not eating. And then there's mixed insulin, which is essentially a combination of the above. So what is duration of insulin action? We've heard about shorter acting and longer acting ones. And it's very important that you really get to know your insulin and all of its traits. And when you look at a certain product, it's very important to know when is the onset, when does it actually take an effect in your body after you injected it or gave a bolus via your insulin pump, and then at which time will it peak? And then there's also the tail of insulin action, and that means so many hours until it's no longer active. And the insulin will continue to lower your glucose levels after it has been injected or delivered for that duration of insulin action. And that can vary depending on the type of insulin that you're using, but also on your individual's physiology, and can also be influenced by other factors such as the amount of insulin per dose. So if you're taking a larger injection, your duration of insulin action is also likely to be longer. And then your injection site, if you inject your insulin in the belly, it will become active much faster than, for example, if you use your upper leg. And then on your individual insulin sensitivity, which we know is different in every person with diabetes. And if we're looking at duration of insulin action in certain insulin types, you can see that there's rapid-acting insulin, which covers Lispro, Aspart, and glulisine. Then there's short-acting insulin, which some of you may know as regular insulin. Then there are the intermediate-acting ones that are staying active for a little bit longer. And then there are the long-acting ones, which essentially cover up to 24 hours. And then there are two new kids on the block, which are the ultra rapids. So we've heard about rapid insulin, which is Aspart and Lispro. And then there are two new products that have recently come to market, and they are essentially these formulas, but with an additive to it, so the onset and the peak would be much faster. So it's important to know that the duration in insulin and action is not very much different from the types who you may already know, but it's going to peak much, much faster. So if you want to pick out an insulin that is right for you, it's important to consider, what do I want to use it for? Do I have access to mixed insulin only and can do a conventional therapy with it? Or do I have access to two types of insulin that I can combine for multiple daily injections? Or if you have access to an insulin pump or even an AID system, is the insulin approved for that? And is your healthcare professional willing to subscribe it to you off-label if it is not? Then there are a variety of other aspects to consider, for example, your age, what infusion system you're using, or if you want to use it during pregnancy. Then, of course, access is an issue. We've heard about that from Sana, and I know a number of people were going to comment on that later. How easily can you access and afford it? Is it covered by your healthcare plan? I know these are important considerations for many of you. And then, does the insulin match your expectations? So if you look at onset time and peak and duration of insulin action, is that something you're looking into? For example, if you pick regular insulin, that would be better for a person that would eat low carb or lots of fats and proteins. But if you're a carb lover like me, you will benefit from the ultra rapids, definitely. And then, of course, also, do you experience any side effects with it? Sometimes insulin can cause itching or skin rashes or changes to the fat tissue where you inject it. So it's always important to monitor it and discuss it with your healthcare professional if you notice anything after you've had an injection. But even more important than the type of insulin is the one-on-one. I know we've all learned that in the beginning when we were new to diabetes, but I think it's sometimes important to revisit that and see, do you actually inject your insulin how it is supposed to be? So always when you inject, make sure your injection site is clean. Don't forget to rotate between different injections and pump sites, because if you're going to use the same spot, like your favorite spots all over again and again, the absorption rate will be much, much lower. And then how you protect your insulin from heat and cold exposure is also very important. That can lower its efficiency. And then, of course, know your insulin so you can calculate its effect into your therapy. And another aspect that is also important, even more important than the type that you're using, is to know your ratios right. So how many units of insulin you're going to need to cover a certain amount of carbohydrates that you eat, and your sensitivity factor, which is needed if you want to correct hypoglycemia back into your desired target range. And here, for example, you can see how different bolus doses affect your blood glucose. So if your bolus dose is too low, you're going to spike high even a couple of hours after. And if your dose is about right, you're going to see a spike in the meal, but it's going to come down eventually. But if your dose is too high, you end up seeing something like that on your CGM or on your blood glucose meter. So it's going to drop not immediately after you injected it, but when it peaks. So after 2 to 3 hours, for example, for rapid insulin. And then timing is also really important. So if you're bolusing way too early, you're going to drop low even during your meal. And this is an example where the timing was about right, so a couple minutes before. But then if you eat and maybe forgot your bolus, then you're going to spike high and it's going to take you longer to get back into your target range. So I'm closing off with a quote from an endocrinologist, and that was 100 years ago. And I think it's really remarkable because what he said is no different 100 years later. And that was Elliot Jocelyn, who said, "Insulin is a remedy for the wise and not for the foolish, be they patients or doctors. Everyone knows it requires brains to live long with diabetes, but to use insulin successfully, it requires more than brains." And that's the end of my talk. I'm looking forward to your questions. And if you want to get in touch with me, here's how.
Oh, Katarina, thank you so much. I learned so much. I've actually taken like 3 pages of notes in that presentation. We are going to bring you back for a panel discussion at the end, and we've got some questions that have come in. So I just want to ask you one, if that's okay. We have a question: is ultra-rapid insulin something relatively new? I've never heard of anyone using it. So this is a really great comment. I guess this also depends on where you are in the world as to what is available and what people are using. But is it something new? Can you give us a bit of a timeline on it if you're able to do that?
Relatively new. I'm using an ultra rapid myself. I mix it with a rapid insulin actually in the DIY system that I'm using to get the best of both worlds, kind of.
Yes. Well, I think we have frozen Kati there, I think.
Am I back?
Yes, you are now. Yes, very good.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it was just a momentary.
Sorry about that. I'm facing a couple of connection issues here.
That's all right. Tech issues are all.
Can you hear me okay now?
Yeah, it's a bit, you know what, we'll bring you back at the end. So hopefully when you're back for the panel, things are all good then. But thank you so much. That was just incredible. Thank you very much. We have got so many comments coming in, and we will get to them all at the end. I like this one though. Somebody said, "It definitely stings. This is an ultra rapid insulin, and I have had some issues with leaky and bloody pump sites because of the ingredients that help it absorb faster." Yeah, there we go. We've got some comments there as well that are jumping around. There's one comment though that I do want to say, because just in case anybody is wondering what this is. Now, when we're talking about comments, these are all in our Facebook, on the Facebook feed. That's the only way that we can bring your comments straight across. So if you've got anything to say or a question, you'll need to be adding them to the comments on our Facebook page. But somebody said, "Hi, I'm a type F." Now, if you're not sure, DDoc seems to have its own language sometimes. Type F stands for family and friends. So if you're wondering what a type F is, that is what it is. That's what it refers to. We very much love our type F. So thank you for adding that, and thank you very much for watching. Okay, we are going to change and mix it up a little bit right now. And we're going to do a Q&A actually, and I get to ask questions. I love putting other people in the hot seat. I am going to now introduce my mate, Gordon Bunyan, who is here from Australia, where it is at about 5:30 a.m. or something pretty awful and early. So I'm hoping that he has had his coffee. Gordon's going to introduce himself, but the reason that we have brought him into this session today is because he has had diabetes for a long time. He's going to tell us exactly how long. And therefore, he has used a lot of different insulins, and his diabetes management has changed over the years. So I'm really excited that I get to ask him some questions about just how that has changed, how things are different now to what they were like when he was first diagnosed, what his diagnosis looked like, what was he actually told about insulin. We've got some really great conversations. Gordon and I have these chats all the time when we're both in the same city, and I'm so thrilled that I get to getting to join our team right now. Where are you, Gordon? Are you coming in so that I can? There you are. Hello, good morning to you. How are you?
Morning, Renza. I wish we could have these talks at a more reasonable hour, though.
Yes, I know. And when I'm back in Melbourne, we can catch up at, for brunch or something when it's far, far nicer for you. But thank you.
Indeed.
Getting up very, very early. So thank you to you and to everyone at home as well for, you being up and probably clambering around and making lots of noise. Gordon, can you introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about you, how long you've had diabetes. Let's start with that. How long have you had diabetes?
So it'll be 48 years this year, or 49 years. I can't actually remember exactly, but long enough.
Okay, can I just say, you need to know, because in Australia we have something called Killian medals, and they are given to people. The first Killian medal you get is when you've had diabetes for 50 years. So Gordon, as somebody who is on the Killian board, you probably should know this. Please find this out so that you can get your medal.
Well, anybody who was looking carefully would have noticed that I used two numbers in my intro video. So it's actually 48 years this
48
year.
years. Okay, excellent. That's a long, long time. I'm going to ask you about when you were diagnosed. We haven't got a heap of time because I would love to just really be speaking for ages about this, but tell us a little bit about your diagnosis story. What was your introduction to insulin 48 years ago? What did that look like?
So it was 1975. I was 18, first year university, and I came home from uni, and my brother said, "You look as though you've just come out of some concentration camp."
Oh.
And that, I suppose, was the first thing that started thinking. I was thinking whether I might have had something. But I was treated in rural New South Wales, so that's country Australia, not quite the outback, but it was still reasonably remote. And my first doctor was a heart surgeon. So his approach was reasonably basic. So I don't think he had the brains necessarily that Jocelyn was talking about. But after that, I moved back to uni and had my first association with the diabetes organisation. So the Diabetes Association of the Australian Capital Territory introduced me to my first real and revolutionary endocrinologist, Cress Eastman, who started by saying, don't organise your life around your diabetes, but the other way around.
Yeah.
You need to be living your life first. And it was a great advice, because it meant that every time something new happened, I was ready to take it on. So I started 1 injection a day in Albury, in rural Australia. In Canberra, they moved it to 2 injections a day. And from there, I went to, I think, so that was fast acting and long acting. Then 3 injections. So it went on from there, all with syringes. In fact, I started with glass syringes. And I've, in the last year, finally, after 47 years, I tried a pump last year.
Right. Yes. I'm going to come back about that.
Big changes.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to come back and talk about that in a minute. I just want to say I'm so delighted with the comments that are coming in. People are sharing what time it is wherever they are in the world, and then also how many years they've had insulin. So how many
That's good.
they've had diabetes. So I'm loving that that this is the sort of discussion that's happening. And somebody has said, Gordon, and I will make sure I remind you of this, you need to join the 50 years of diabetes Facebook group. So when you click over, and anyone who else is watching and who has had diabetes for that long, please do jump over and do that. Let's talk about the different types of insulins that you were using. So, you were talking about once a day, then twice a day, then 3 times a day. But you were using you were telling me that back when you were diagnosed, there was bovine insulin, right? Is that what you were using? Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so I was a combination. When I went on to 2 insulins, I was a bovine and porcine.
Right.
And I have to confess that I'm the son of a grazier, a cattle farmer. So the idea of having pig insulin didn't really appeal to me. I don't know why, but anyway.
You okay with the bovine? Was the bovine insulin?
Yeah, that was okay. It was cattle, so I knew cattle. And it worked fine. I really, the biggest problem I had with animal insulins were for a 20-year-old who was a little bit vain. it caused clumping on, arms and particularly on abdomen. And I was, used to whinge about it looking unsightly. But apart from that, it worked, very well for me. I mean, I've been very lucky in the way in which insulin has helped me rather than hindered my enjoyment of life.
Yeah.
And as I said to you the other day, but for insulin, I wouldn't have had a life. So it's been really relatively easy from the point of view of insulin. Of course, monitoring and testing and those devices were all, they're quite blunt instruments. And that was probably as big a problem as the insulin itself.
I'm going to ask you, I want to talk about that because you're such a huge advocate for diabetes research in Australia. You're part of the Diabetes Australia Research Program and, obviously somebody who is very, very, pushes research in a big, big way. We celebrate the centenary of insulin, as I said, a huge medical breakthrough. But in terms of living with diabetes, there are other breakthroughs in our lifetime. Can we talk a little bit about monitoring? What was that like as well? And then what did that mean in terms of what you did with your insulin? I mean, if you're not getting an exact number, talk to me about that. What did that look like?
Well, sometimes I wonder what we did with the monitoring, because it was, when I was first diagnosed, it was, 5 drops of urine in a test tube with 10 drops of water and a tablet. And it bubbled. It was fantastic if you wanted to be a chemistry specialist. But apart from that, it wasn't really useful. I mean, it told you whether you had a very high reading or not. It couldn't really warn you about oncoming hypos particularly. But it didn't really mean that you then changed your insulin regime. You had an injection in the morning and you had one at night, for example, or you mixed them up on both occasions. But really, the testing didn't mean that I could go, okay, that means I can adjust my insulin by this amount. Ratios, I've only learned about ratios in the last, couple of years. So in those days, it just wasn't something that you could factor in.
Yep.
The next advance was weeing on test strips, and they were more accurate and more nuanced, if you like. So the colors were slightly different. And then the change came with blood glucose monitoring, where you put the blood on a strip and shoved it in a machine.
Amazing. Now, our time is nearly up, and I do just quickly want to jump in and ask you about having moved to a pump and what that's meant in terms of, what you're thinking about your diabetes and in terms of the insulin that you've been using and what that's meant. Has it made it easier? What was, because we've known each other for a very long time, and it's not that you were against pumps, you just didn't think that it necessarily was the right thing for you. So tell me, what was the thing that made you go, yeah, okay, now's the time after 48 years?
The introduction of the concept of a cassette and no tubes, and that's the only thing that changed my mind. Look, I think that that you need a different approach with pumps as opposed to pens, but I'm not convinced that they're the answer. In fact, at the moment, I'm back using a pen. So I don't think it's, for me anyway, it's not the end. I'm looking forward to, and I think I said when we've spoken, when I go onto a pump full time, it'll be when I use a smart pump.
Okay. All right. Okay. All right, Gordon, thank you so much. I'm going to say to you, jump off and go and have some more coffee. Before you do that, we have had people tallying up the number of years people have been living with insulin who have shared. I hope you've added Gordon's 48 years to that and my 25, because currently we're at 420 years or something like that of diabetes expertise in the people who are watching and who have shared how long they've been living with diabetes and using insulin. I mean, I think that most of the people who I can see is sharing, they're people who have lived with type 1 and have been using insulin for the amount of time that they've had diabetes. Gordon, thank you so much for sharing your story. As I said, we will get you back a little later on when it is time for our panel discussion at the end. Go and take a deep breath. Thank you so, so much. All right. Okay, we're going to shift things around again. I'm sorry if you're getting sick of these Aussie accents, because I still have one more for you. I'm so thrilled that David Burren, who is our very own bionic Wookiee, has joined us this morning, also from Melbourne in Australia. And he's going to talk about his own experiences of using ultra rapid insulin. That really has been the focus today. We wanted to talk about all types of insulin, but the newest kids on the block, I guess. And David is going to share those. Good morning, David. How are you?
Good morning. I'm awake, which is a very good start for this time of day.
That's a great start. You sound very awake, and I'm really looking forward to hearing your talk about your experience. Now, I know earlier on, just a little secret, where I said we have somebody who is joining us who has graphed every single A1C ever in his life. Let me present to you our bionic.
Yeah, okay, fine.
So yes, he is one of the people who uses data in the most incredible ways that I can only be constantly amazed about. So I'm thrilled that you're going to now be sharing some of your experiences of using ultra rapid insulin, how it differs from other insulins, and what you have to say about it. This is your story, so take it away. Thank you.
Okay. Cool. So I've been using pretty much every insulin available to me. So I've had diabetes for 40 years, not quite as long as Gordon, but I've used a few insulins over that time. I'm going to run through this quite quickly. So we have different speed insulins, and we used to, in the old days, just be able to tell the system what the duration was. And the pumps that we had would say, oh, 50% of the time has passed, so 50% of the insulin is left. When we're going to give ourselves another injection, then hopefully we're not going to give too much. We're going to see how much is still there. So this was quite simple maths. It didn't really reflect reality. There is a long tail of insulin that Katarina talked about that this didn't take into account. And in fact, you'll see on this graph, these graphs cut off at about 5%, because the systems those days said, well, when it's down to that level, it doesn't matter. It was just approximations. There are different systems out there, and how we use the insulins is guided by the system we have to use. So the old wizards had just this duration, and with some of the Aspart and Lispro insulins, 4 or 5 hours was not uncommon. There's one system around now that uses a different thing called insulin action time, but it is not the same number. Don't worry about the fact that it's a different number. And similarly, the open source, the DIY looping. Oh, by the way, the AID, just as a reminder, is automated insulin delivery. So the open source systems use an exponential model where it talks about the time to peak activity and the overall duration. But again, this is not the same duration that we had in the old systems. So you'll see here in this example, the straight line there was the old linear 4 hours. And then there's this curve that runs along saying, this is with a 75-minute peak and then a 9-hour duration. And 9 hours says to a lot of people, oh my God, that's way too long. It needs to be much shorter. I've always used 5 hours. I'll put 5 hours in. If you put 5 hours in, you'll see that that curve ends up much lower. It changes the shape of the whole graph. And we can end up with the system underestimating how much insulin is on board, somewhere between 2 to 6 hours, and then can end up giving us more insulin because it thinks we don't have enough. And we can suddenly go hypo for no reason and need to eat stuff. That's annoying when it happens. We can manage it, but in the fully automated systems, I like tuning them so that this stuff just works. So with different speed insulins, they peak at different times. So you'll see the even faster ones drop off sooner. The duration's about the same on all of them, but when we get right out to the right, that line is only a tiny bit above zero. It does add up with all the little bits of basal and bolus insulin that it's adding up. So this is how much insulin is still on board, and you'll see graphs like this, but the other graph that's interesting to look at is how fast it's dropping, and that's an effect of how much of the insulin is actually being used now. So this is the slope of the previous graphs. And you'll see that the faster insulins peak earlier. They get up, if you think maybe it gets up to about 10%, and then we notice that it's happening. So they get to that point sooner. It means we don't have to bolus or pre-bolus for a meal quite so early. They also seem to come on a little bit stronger, but overall, the area under the graph for each of these is all the same. And that dashed line there is the old linear model, which used to just say, well, the insulin starts working here and stops working there, and it's all the same throughout. And like I said before, that was simple maths, but didn't reflect reality. This seems to work quite well. So the maths is one thing, translating that into the real world. If we have the faster insulins, it can adjust a lot faster and react to things. And the insulin runs down sooner, but the system can always put more insulin in. With those things, if we compare with someone who's using injections, that means you don't necessarily have to pre-bolus before your meal as much, or maybe you bolus at the same time, but also may mean that several hours after your meal, you need another injection. So some people, when they're on MDI, end up with using multiple insulins, a slower one and a shorter one. If we've got an automated pump system, it's just so much quicker and easier. It can just adjust for us. There's a side effect where the slower insulins hang around for longer before they have effect. So we end up with a higher amount of insulin running around in our system. The basal activity level is the same. It just takes a little bit longer to get used. This comes in when it comes to exercise. So when we're doing aerobic exercise, any insulin floating around in our system can get picked up by the muscles and start sending us down into hypothyroidism. So we end up eating. We go to exercise to lose weight and we end up eating, and it can sometimes cancel itself out. But if I reduce the amount of insulin before I get to the exercise, I've been able to go for bike rides of an hour or two and not have to eat anything, with my glucose just running along at around 5.5 or 100, depending on which units you use. And it works quite well. You need to be careful not to drop the insulin too much, because DKA is always a risk, but it makes things a little bit more flexible, because the faster insulins, those changes in insulin on board can happen faster. There are some clinical trials which seem to say that there are no improvements. We use the faster insulins and we didn't get better HbA1cs, we didn't get more time in range. But I find that when I'm using the faster insulins, I eat carbier things. I pay less attention to my diabetes in the moment. Katarina talked about the quality of life. It's so much easier. I think about my diabetes less, and still the system is achieving acceptable results. If I paid as much attention to how much am I eating, what's going on, no, don't eat that, I'm going to choose this food. With the faster insulins, I probably would get better HbA1cs, but it doesn't matter. I'm getting stuff that I and my doctors, well, in fact, my doctors look at and say, well, keep doing what you're doing. And I, in fact, have not counted food or declared carbs to my system for 2 years now. It works quite well. I've been able to do it with the slower insulins as well, but I do get a little bit more variation, and I do tend to be more careful about what I'm eating. A couple of people talked about drawbacks with some of the faster insulins. Because the insulin drops away sooner, if our pump dies, we're going to notice it sooner. We just need to be careful about that. The accelerants used in the faster insulins can cause stinging for some people. And there was also mention of some of the mixing that we sometimes do with other insulins. So we slowly introduce the faster insulins. And I've done that whenever I've been changing to a new insulin type that's known to have some of this stinging, so that my body's adjusted to it. And it hasn't become a problem. Overall, the faster insulins just make the system a lot more responsive. It's interesting when I see my blood glucose going up and up and up, and then suddenly it turns the corner. If I was using a slower insulin, I'd expect it to keep going. It's quite dramatic, and it will suddenly drop down again and get back down to target within half an hour or so. There is still access issues all around the world on different countries. we do have some of the faster insulins here, but not all of them. So I'm sure I'm not the only one who would like access to more stuff. That's my last slide. I'm happy to keep talking, but I have talked for a long time.
Actually, I think you were right on time. So thank you so much for that. Look, that's so interesting. And we're always really interested to hear people's own lived experience. That's so, so important. We've got a comment. David Burren, I love your off-label T-shirt. Your collection of T-shirts are always fun. And there's another comment, and I just love this. Somebody said, it's Caro again. Oh, I love these doc talks. Best talks ever. High quality talks, amazing speakers, super interesting topics. Thank you so much. You know, we do talk about our events being by the community for the community, and we love the fact that we can bring people like David and Gordon and Kati and Sana and Chris, who's about to join us as well. People who are just incredible in the diabetes community, sharing their knowledge, and that is exactly what we're trying to do at DDoc. David, thank you. Please go and, I don't know, splash some water on your face or whatever you need to do to make sure you stay awake, because I am going to bring you back shortly. But thank you so much. Thank you. Lovely. We are getting so many fantastic comments coming in, as I said. So if you would like to share something or ask a question, you need to be watching from our Facebook page, and you can leave our comments there. Also, you will have noticed that our speakers have got their Twitter, we've got their Twitter handles after their name. If you are sharing on Twitter, please feel free to do that. Use the handles if you can, because it's always a great way then to be able to link to each other and to follow people and to make sure that our community is out there. And also always use the DDoc hashtag as well. Look at this. We have David's, David has also brought a cheer squad. Joe there, David Burren, yes, with exclamation points. Okay, our final speaker, and oh my goodness, can I tell you how excited I am? Well, for all of these talks, I know I sound very gushy, but I'm very, very excited to introduce Chris Wilson, who is here from the USA. He's also on the other side of the country to me, but he is talking about an absolutely fascinating topic. Now, I'm going to say I have been watching these conversations on Twitter because Chris is going to talk about why insulin seems to work differently when my glucose levels are higher. And this is something, I've lived with diabetes for 25 years, and I have noticed that insulin seems to work differently depending on what my glucose level is. And so the fact that we have actually got a tool here that we can talk about recognizing this, I'm super interested. Chris, how are you? Thank you for joining us. How are you going?
I'm well. How are you doing, Renza?
Really, really well. But I want to go away so I can sit here and take a million notes and learn even more from you. Take it away and let's talk about what it is that you're going to share with us all today. This is so interesting.
Well, it's been a fair amount of work. Let's see. There we go. We have slides now. All right. So what I'm going to talk about here is dynamic ISF, which is both a theory and then also used to refer to an algorithm, or at least a slightly differently built algorithm that's currently being tested sort of based on that theory. But sort of at the base of all of it, and this goes back to when I first got my very first insulin pump, and I was testing my blood glucose every hour. I didn't have a CGM yet, but even at that point, I had noticed that when my blood sugar was higher, it took more insulin to achieve. I didn't get the same reduction in blood sugar for every unit of insulin that I gave, and I spent years trying to track doses and build graphs and figure out exactly what was going on. But about a year and a half ago, I decided to actually see if other people were seeing this, and if so, if there was some sort of a pattern. So I've got listed on there, sort of the question that I asked of people, and I took all those answers and did some arithmetic, not math, with them to sort of figure out how blood glucose levels fit in. And it seemed very, very common in online discussions that people would say, well, yeah, when my blood sugar's higher, I need to get more and more aggressive with my dosing. But exactly how that is seemed to vary. But when I sort of normalized it all against the total daily insulin that people used, a pattern emerged. And what's sort of graphed out here is the data that I collected and then calculated. All of the blue dots are an individual and what their effective insulin sensitivity factor was that they were using for that correction dose from a particular blood glucose level. And these are all people who have over time accumulated tons of knowledge. They figured out if my blood sugar is 300, I need to give this number of units. If my blood sugar is 400, I need to give Y number of units, whatever. And so looking at sort of the underlying math, and then I fed it all into a machine learning system, and then figured out what the pattern was that the machine learning system had found. And that's represented here in this the sort of red surface that you can see. And it's not exact. We know the data is going to be a little bit messy because these are all, people's estimations. This isn't, measured in a lab or anything. But sort of historical note on this, and I didn't even know this when I went into it, was that actually Diabeloop in France had noticed this phenomenon and actually included in a poster presentation that they made at the Diabetes Technology Meeting in 2018, although they didn't dig into what some of the underlying patterns were. But some of what may actually be happening underneath it then was just sort of came out in something published a year ago, or I guess, well, yeah, a little over a year ago now, that when you expose tissues to more insulin, higher concentrations of insulin, they actually reduce the number of insulin receptors on the surface of the cells. So tissues sort of build up a tolerance to insulin. The more you expose them to insulin, the less responsive they become. So in order to sort of integrate this into an algorithm, what we replaced was the standard sort of insulin sensitivity factor or correction factor setting with a dynamic value that gets recalculated every single time the loop runs. It's based on a weighted average of total daily insulin. It's also based on your current blood glucose. And then there's also sort of an adjustment factor that's built in there so that people can fine tune it to work exactly for how they need it to. The current status of that, it's out there in the wild. We've got hundreds of people that are participating in online discussions and testing. There's hundreds of people signed into Discord servers getting updates on this, and most of these people are rebuilding their apps every month because their development versions, they expire. So they're putting in that effort because it's working well enough for them. There was some iterative development. Actually, the initial equation that the machine learning system came up with got adjusted based on the tester feedback. People in the doc came back and said it's a little bit too aggressive in this particular glucose range. It's not quite aggressive enough in a different one. And so we found different functions and equations that better fit what was going on. We do still have some sort of unanswered questions, especially to do with the time waiting for the total daily insulin averages. We don't know if what we're using is ideal. We don't know if this varies between individuals. The other sort of outstanding question is why this wasn't really apparent in clamp studies, which are really considered the gold standard for how we measure insulin sensitivity, at least as far as effects on glucose specifically. But we've already got people that are building new algorithms on top of this. So it's working well enough that people are clearly at that level of comfort with it. I will note that the current implementation is partial. All we're dealing with is the insulin sensitivity factor. But a lot of people that are using it have noted that it replaces at least some of the automations that they had built in, people had actually created rules in their automated insulin systems that when their blood sugar hit a certain level to switch to a different profile or to adjust a setting. And this, at least for some people, eliminates a fair number of those that need for all those different settings and rules that they had. The other thing is that the underlying theory still needs some fleshing out, assuming that we can actually establish that this is a real thing and that for some reason it's not showing up in laboratory research. Then the question becomes why. What are we missing? And part of it may even result in changing the way that we think about the insulin and what its effects are and how we consider, sensitivity to it. Moving beyond just, changing the mass of glucose that's in circulation in your blood, but maybe even, integrating calories as a measure of energy. So sort of there's the what's next. It obviously needs additional testing. This is something completely new. It's a completely new concept. Not everybody agrees that it's even a real thing. But at a minimum, we need to establish that it's no worse than what's currently accepted. And we now have peer-reviewed research that says it's as good as anything commercial, which is the base OREF1 algorithm, which is in OpenAPS and Android APS. We don't have a timeline for any kind of wider release. That's going to be up to the developers. And I'm staying out of that. I'm the theory guy. And the other thing is, it's likely that this is just the first step. I can at least envision how we would bring additional dimensionality into account with this. So one step at a time. Once we've got this established and it's sort of on firm ground, we may move forward. It may fall flat. We don't know for sure yet, but it's at least looking promising. And so that's where things are right now.
Amazing. Oh my gosh. Chris, amazing. I'm just going to read a comment and then I'm going to editorialize a little bit if I can, because this is a comment that I was sitting, so many of them, but Sana, so this isn't just me. I always felt like I was the weird one. I bet that there are a lot of people who are watching this either now or they're going to play it back later, who are going to be listening to this, and their minds are going to be blown, not because they've never heard of this before, but because they have experienced it but haven't been able to put it in words or haven't known how to have the conversation about it. So thank you so much for this. At our ISPAD DDoc symposium last year, I think it was Tom Robinson said you should never, ever underestimate the type 1 diabetes community and what people in the community can do. And I think we are once again seeing how it is that this user-led innovation and recognition of what's going on is absolutely driving so much of what is happening and what is so real in the diabetes world. So thank you so much. Go and take a deep breath. We're going to bring you back for the panel, and we've got questions that have come in, but I will say that there are so many comments saying that we're just so pleased that that this is being discussed. And just quickly, we've got a comment up here. In Pakistan, mostly people are unaware of ISF. Even they are not checking their blood glucose before meals or even twice a day. Now, a lot of that could be because access obviously is an issue, but also what is the education that we're getting around this? So that's also something really interesting. But
and access to testing supplies.
Of course, absolute access to everything. Yes, certainly. So thank you so much. We will be bringing you back, but do follow Chris on Twitter if you're not already doing that. And if you go to Genius Glucose, you can see there's a website as well. I know that it's just there's just a little bit on there, but have a look there. Okay, everybody. Now all of you take a deep breath as well, because I know that my brain's hurting a little bit. But now I'm going to get you to do some more work for me, because we're going to do some more Meethi questions. But can I just say what an absolutely incredible group of speakers we've had. Okay, let's get straight into it though. Some people I think in the DDoc team have already jumped in and have already answered this. Okay, so Meethi.com and use the code again. It's the same code. So if you've still got it, it's 147477927. Have you used ultra rapid acting insulins? And we absolutely, of course, do have an option there. No, but I'm curious to try it out, as well as no, I don't have access to it, because that's certainly the case for some people. People are using it right now. Okay. Very good. So again, this is just for us to get an idea of who it is that we're speaking with, so that we know that when we're putting together programs and when we're talking about things on socials, what it is that people are interested in and who we are talking to. Okay, let's move along to the next question. Right, so if you have used rapid-acting insulin, what was your experience? It's an open-ended question. Share with us. Tell us, did you love it? Were you not quite so sure about it? Did it completely and utterly blow your mind because it was different to anything that you have ever used before? I know we did hear somebody who said that they were mixing it, and we will obviously say that is off-label, but David's got a T-shirt. So what is your experience? Love it. And my high-carb lifestyle loves it too. All right. Like it, but not always making such a huge difference. Okay, that's really interesting. So, again, what we see, and we see this always, is that people's experiences are different. No one size fits all. And I think that is really something that I believe, even though we know that, we need to keep reinforcing that, so that we understand that guidelines are great and recommendations are great, but, there really isn't that one size fits all. And someone said, love it, except when I'm really high. Thanks, Chris. See, something's going on when our glucose levels are higher. It stings. And that's that's something that we do think about. These comments are really great that are coming in. Helps me enjoy life, which equals carbs. For the carb lovers, perhaps it's something that's super duper important there. Really interesting comments coming in. Great in the beginning, and then I developed resistance. And that's something that I think we may have heard as well in conversations in our community too. So, okay. So someone says, I remembered, I've just lost it, but they said that it has, I think it's going to reload. Okay. I remember the quicker action times at the beginning, but now it has become the new normal. Isn't it incredible how things do that? At the beginning, when we're using something for the first time, it's like, wow, this is so different. And then after long, it just becomes what it is that we do and what it is that we understand and accept our diabetes to be. All right, let's go. One last question. And this is actually specifically in relation to Chris's talk that we have just heard. So have you noted your insulin sensitivity changing based on your blood glucose levels? You can just write yes or no, but if you've got anything you'd like to add, please do. I'm a massive yes to this. And, it's why I've just been so fascinated by this topic that Chris just spoke about, and other people as well. Yeah, I'm seeing that people are saying yes, but loudly. Yes, but louder. Yes, with extra E's and S's. Yeah, interesting. User-led discussions, look what they show. All right. Rage bolus for the win. Oh, goodness. Isn't it? I mean, there's and terminology that just becomes part of the lexicon of diabetes, rage bolus. All right. Okay. Just as we are finishing those, I will remind everybody, please, if you've got any questions or if you've got any comments, like the one that the diabetic survivor has just asked, fantastic talk, thanks. Any chance you can share the deck, we will look into that and come back to you. But just a reminder that the talk that you are seeing right here, right now, will be available on our Facebook page, on our YouTube channel, on the DDoc website as well. So you will be able to watch it again, and you'll also be able to share it with all of your networks as well. Pop it in newsletters, put it in your own network news, pages and whatever else, so that more people can watch it and understand what it is that we've been talking about. But we certainly will get to that. All right. So we have about 20 minutes left where we are getting ready for our panel discussion. If you've got comments, if you've got questions, you need to use our Facebook, the comments in Facebook. But I'm just still laughing at that comment from Sana. It isn't just me. I thought I was the weird one. Can I just say, I think that this is something that I hear all the time when it comes to diabetes. I've so often thought I thought it's just me, and it's never ever been just me. There's always other people who are walking the same path. So that is one of the reasons why peer support is so important. Having these conversations within our diabetes community is so important, and creating safe spaces for us to have these sorts of conversations is absolutely critical. So get ready for our panel discussion and drop your comments here in the chat on Facebook. And please, if we could bring back all of our speakers so that you're not just having to stare at my face. Hello, Katarina. Hello, Sana. Hello, Chris. And there's Gordon and there's David. Look at that. We are all here now. How are we all? Are we all good? Mind's blown. Fantastic.
So much feeling less weird. Thank you, Chris.
Excellent. We've got a comment here from Shane who says, amazing speakers as always. Thanks all. And here are those amazing speakers right now. I'm going to start with a question if I can. So today we are talking about, the topic of this event is your diabetes may vary and your insulin may as well. So the YDMV, your diabetes may vary, that's something that's in our community all the time. Katarina, I want to ask you this question. Why is it that insulin in particular seems to be one of the areas where there doesn't seem to be much of a discussion, often from healthcare professionals? There sort of does seem to be an idea that it is just a one-size-fits-all. Why do you think that is with insulin maybe more than with different technologies? Sorry to throw you in the deep end there, but I'm starting with you.
No worries at all. Well, we're all different, right? We're people with different hormonal constellations. We have different body weights, different dimensions, different ages. So even for one person, how you respond to a certain type of insulin will change over time. And there's no one size fits all for sure, but it's all about finding out what works for you and to get the most out of what you have access to. I think this is always the top priority. And whenever you think, oh, well, this is really not working, or it really does not match my expectations, then I think it's time to move on and find something else for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes though, having those sorts of conversations can be difficult. I love this question. And Gordon, this is asked of you, so I'm going to start with you, but everybody else should think of an answer just in case I throw to you as well. But do you have the feeling that diabetes technology has evolved massively in the last few years in particular?
Absolutely, Renza. Look, in thinking about this talk, I was thinking, well, actually, insulin's in some respects only a very small part of the improvement. I know the improvements have been massive, but it really is delivery systems and monitoring systems that I've noticed the most substantial change. So yes, massive is a description.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what, I'm going to throw to you, David. I'm going to ask you, because as somebody who is a diabetes technologist, I guess, what have you found you and I have known each other about 5 years. Let's talk about that time period. Has there been this massive exponential change, do you think, in that time period?
Yes, certainly over a longer time frame. Things always seem to be moving faster now than they did before.
Yeah.
Certainly the technology I'm using now versus like the automated technology that I'm using now versus what I had 5 years ago was the algorithms are similar. They've refined a bit, but more tools are coming together. So all of these things of the different CGMs and the smaller pumps and faster pumps, more convenient and smaller devices to run these on, all of these things are advancing. And yes, when we multiply all those things together, the advancements seem to be quite astronomical.
Yeah, absolutely. And Sana, what are the discussions that you're having in your networks about things that are changing, whether it be different devices, different insulins, the two coming together? How do those conversations happen, and what are the conversations? What are you talking about that?
So recently, flash monitoring has come into Pakistan, and people are starting to use it. Those who can afford, they're starting to use it, and people are actually looking at the data and the patterns and realizing what kind of food affect their blood sugar levels. So that's something that's new for us, I would say. So in our networks, in our peer support networks, that's talked of the down at the moment. But yes, again, that's a very small community. Many still are struggling with checking once or twice a day. So
yeah,
there's a rainbow of kind of access issues.
There was a comment just up there, and I want to come back to it, and I do want to ask you, and it was from Kara. She said, why does it seem diabetes technology changes so much, but access to insulin doesn't? Why does diabetes technology evolve this much, but access to insulin does not? Does it feel like that?
I'm a bit I have a harsh feeling towards that, and I'm sorry for saying that, but I think that it's mostly because the health systems have accepted the status quo. They are okay being what they have, having what they have, and they're okay with offering what they have. So that's what needs to change, and that's why these talks are so much important. People need to highlight the challenges that they're facing so that someone listens. I'm sure someday someone will listen and things will start changing.
Wonderful, thank you. We have a comment here from Aline. And so, Chris, I'm going to ask you a question once I read this out. Way before I learned about dynamic ISF, I asked my healthcare professional if maybe this ratio isn't linear, and their face said, "What?" So my question to you is, have you had conversations with healthcare professionals about the work that you're doing, and what's the response been?
I have. Even going way back when I first started noticing this in myself and trying to graph things out and whatever, I actually tried to discuss it with my endocrinologist, and I got told we see it in hospitalized patients,
right?
When we need to, bring them out of DKA, and we notice that insulin isn't as effective, and then it gets more and more effective as they come closer and closer back into range.
Yeah.
But I was also told there's no data to support adjusting the dosing.
Yeah. Yep. Okay.
And so it doesn't become a standard practice to do that unless there's data to support it. So we wind up in sort of a catch-22 where there's no data because nobody's collecting it. It's going to be expensive. Clamp studies are going to run $30,000 per patient per session.
Yeah.
I mean, that's prohibitively expensive for something that's, sort of pure science.
Yeah.
And so I think the big thing that the sort of light bulb moment that I had was, why don't we just ask people with type 1 diabetes?
That'd be novel.
That's novel, yes. I was about to say, Chris, I've relied on data to make changes, my own, because my reaction is exactly Sana's, I must say.
Yeah. Great comment here, but I'm going to come to you in a minute, David, and ask you about if you've had that conversation with your healthcare professionals personally, like for yourself. So for my child, I found formula aggressive, but you really helped me to understand her sensitivity better and to not be scared of larger corrections at higher blood glucose levels. Thank you. David, tell me, have you spoken with your healthcare professional about what is going on, when it comes to, different glucose levels?
Yeah, well, I think I have a fairly enlightened endocrinologist. We have a peer-to-peer discussion pretty much whenever I go in, and she basically asks me what's the latest things that I've noticed. I haven't particularly discussed with her the issue of variable changing ISF. I have, of course, tested how this worked, and I've got it implemented in my own system. It's a slightly different thing to the dynamic ISF that Chris was talking about, but there are some similarities. When someone says that, I think a bunch of people have said this, when someone says, but there's no data to support this, well, I can do an N=1 study quite quickly, and I do them all the time. And
yes,
if it works for me, then that's a very good start for me. If we can find something more generic that works for other people, hopefully some of the stuff I've been doing with, this faster insulin that we can't get in Australia yet, but I've managed to get some and been using it. I've been able to show people what the improvements are. And it's largely improvements to quality of life. Now, trying to get that listed on some bean counters spreadsheet of this is a good reason to have it is harder than for us people who actually live with diabetes, but it's a start.
Absolutely. Katarina, I've got two questions here that I'm going to throw your way. So this is the first one. How much faster can we go in terms of how quickly insulin can start working? Is there going to be an ultra rapid insulin at some point? I don't know. We're going to have to come up with a new name. Those insulin vials are too little to keep adding different names like that. But what do you think? How fast can we go? We're not fast enough yet, though, right?
Yeah, I think so. The ultra rapids, they act a bit faster than the ones that are just rapid. And their onset and peak would be a bit faster. And with a bit, that means 5 to 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And I think the limitation is not necessarily the type of insulin, but the place where we inject it. So if you put insulin in fat tissue, which we're doing with insulin pumps and pens and syringes, it's going to take a while because, you know, your body has to get the insulin into the bloodstream and then throughout the entire body, and that takes a while. So if we really want it faster, we would have to find a way to apply the insulin somewhere else. So in a person without diabetes, the pancreas does not put the insulin in the fat. It would go into the bloodstream. And this is why people without diabetes get much faster effects, more than ultra rapid of their insulin. But so far, this is the limit that we have, no matter what type of medication we use.
Yeah, absolutely.
And shorter tails.
Say that again.
And Chris was saying in shorter tails. The human insulin is the old regular insulin, so it's slower than the rapid insulins. But you're right, it gets delivered almost directly to the liver. So it can be turned on and can be turned off straight away. We don't have it sitting around in the subcutaneous tissue and floating around. So it's immediate on, immediate off. And if we could get that in an artificial insulin, some delivery system, it would be amazing.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, absolutely. And we've heard about the rage bolus, right? So if we have a situation like Chris presented, that was fascinating data and insights, by the way, and hours go by and it's still high, then you have a tendency to just bolus again and again and again. And if you don't know that the tail of your insulin action will still be active, you end up in a pretty bad hypo. So I think we've all been there, right? And if we put wrong settings that do not match your physiology and that do not match how insulin acts in your body, in your bolus calculator, or even if you just do it in your mind, then you end up risking a low. Yeah. But this is why I love events like this, right? This is where I generate my next research questions from. Real world data from the community. And then
Katarina, another question for you here. Do you have professional experiences with both ultra rapid insulins used by children? If so, has a super fast one, an ultra rapid insulin, better results in glucose management?
Yeah, well, my impression, but this is N=1 as well, is the smaller you are, the less is the effect, because even rapid insulins get absorbed quite quickly if you're a small child and do not have a great body weight, and the effect is probably less than in an adult, but it's still there.
Yep. We had a comment and it did flash up, but I'm just going to read it out just because I think that this is really an interesting comment from Andrea Lindbergh. She says, even ultra rapid acting insulins are not very fast. I guess this is, it's all relative, isn't it? That is really one of the biggest weak link in having a fully closed loop system. And I think that just what that reminds us of is that as people with diabetes, it doesn't matter what the tools are, being able to effectively mimic what would happen if we didn't have diabetes still remains an impossibility, really, in a lot of ways, until we have everything working exactly as we need it to. Now, I wanted a question to end with that was a little bit about where do we go in the future, and we've kind of got a question from somebody. So I'm going to ask this, but I'm not going to ask everybody. So let me just ask a couple of you this question. I'm going to ask you, Chris, what is your feeling on encapsulated insulin?
Encapsulated insulin?
Yes. I can throw to David Burren and he can start, and then I can come.
Can I get a definition?
Yeah,
there?
David, do you want to go?
Well, it's not a term that's often widely used. I can think of several definitions. So which one do we go with? There's some of the insulins are the smart insulins, which tend to activate when there's more glucose in the system. And there's been research in those. I'm very nervous about that because this activation I then have no control over once it's in the system. I'm not sure which other definition might be used.
You know what, we might leave it because I think that, Terry, if you want to ask the question again with a little bit more clarification, we'll see if we can grab it, but we're probably about out of time, I think, just about. I do want to thank all of our speakers. We have got so many comments, so many really positive comments. Love this talk. Amazing speakers as always. Thank you so much for sharing your incredible knowledge, for sharing your own personal lived experience as well. I think that it is critically important, but it is also a big thing to do. So thank you for doing that in a public forum. Please, everybody, while everybody's here right now, you can see Twitter handles there. Please do engage and connect with our speakers. They truly are wonderful people in the diabetes community, amazing advocates, and we're so thrilled here at DDoc that we were able to bring them together for this. And Stephanie, part of the DDoc team, so happy to see so many familiar faces here. It feels a bit like a reunion after we've all had a bit of time off over the holiday period. So thank you so much. What a great panel discussion, and what great presentations from these speakers. And really all that is left for me is to do a little bit of a wrap up, but there are a couple of things that I would like to say before I do that. So to start, as I said earlier on, this talk remains forevermore on our Facebook page, on our website at DDoc, on our YouTube channel as well. That means that it's easy, super easy to share. You don't need to have, we know that not everybody has Facebook, but it's available on our YouTube, so you can share with people who are not on there, and making sure that you do get it out there. We know actually that the majority of people who watch this watch it after the live stream, and it's often because it is something that they share in their own networks and then have conversations about in their own group meetings and group discussions. So that's really wonderful. Please do share. A huge thanks to Lily for sponsoring the event, and for giving us the space to have these community discussions. We think that's really super important. You get to see me from the DDoc team doing all the talking here, but really this is all I do. We have got the most incredible team behind the scenes. So thank you. Thank you to Hannah, to Morgan, to Steffi, to Tebet, and of course to Bastian as well, who is always there and always making sure that we're staying on track and making sure that we're living, breathing the DDoc philosophy. Now, I know that you think, well, this is great. This is a first event, but what's next? Well, I'm so pleased that I get to tell you there is lots coming up, and here are some save the dates for us. Conference season starts again next month, and the DDoc team will be at ATTD, which is in Berlin, which is where most of the DDoc team is from. So they will be there, and we will all be there at a DDoc symposium. We held the first DDoc symposium at ATTD last year, and we're absolutely thrilled that we get to do it again this year under the banner of what we wish you knew and why. You should see the speakers that we are bringing together. You do not want to miss this. Of course, if you're at ATTD, you can watch it. But because we're all about making things accessible for as many people as possible, it will also be live streamed. Details at ddoc.org/symposium. We have a Doc Day event, our first one for the year, on the 30th of March. Details are there, again, all on our website. And of course, we have everything on our socials as well. Now, you've heard me talk about DDoc Voices. We have our voices are coming back to ATTD. Now, if you have thought, gosh, this is something I really should look into, maybe I should apply, maybe I have applied in the past and I want to again, you will be able to for the second half of the year, when we'll be at EASD and at ISPAD. Applications open on the 1st of July, and we would love to see your name on an application. Come and join our network. It is such an incredible way to meet other diabetes advocates from around the globe. When I say by the community, for the community, this is one of the prime examples of how that works so well. Keep an eye on everything that we do via our socials. We're just getting started. I think that this has been a remarkable way to kick off the 2023 DDoc year. Just watch us go. We've got so much more coming for you. Thank you to everybody who has been watching. We're so pleased that you've been able to be part of this. Thank you to everybody who's watching afterwards. Andrea, you're very, very welcome. She's just thanked us there. And yes, they are such important topics. That's what we like to do. Bring topics that you may not be seeing being discussed in these sorts of forums. You've probably seen them, though, in the diabetes community. We're just trying to make them a little bit more mainstream so that they give, I guess it gives some legitimacy out there that we can have these difficult and important discussions. Thank you so much. I'm going to jump off now. I'm going to go back and enjoy the Big Apple and all it has to offer, and I will see you at our next event. Thank you so much.